Hello and welcome to the Real Talk podcast, a podcast that explores the real life stories of overcoming challenges, personal development, and what it takes to operate at an elite level. Now, this show would not be possible without the team at ECO. ECO are one of the UK's most exciting and rewarding sales and customer service contact centres, working with some of the UK's biggest and best brands. ECO have contact centres in the northeast in Sunderland and in South Yorkshire in the heart of Sheffield city centre. They're always recruiting for the best and the most elite level sales and customer service personnel. Give them a follow on social media and visit ecoutsourcing.co.uk/careers to find out more. Now, on to today's episode. Really excited to be joined by Drew Lasker. Drew is a professional basketball player with the Newcastle Eagles. He's a 9-time British Basketball League champion. He's born in America. He lived in Germany. He moved across to the UK to pursue his dream to play professional basketball. That's what he's been doing for the last 16 years. Let's find out a little bit more about the man, Drew Lasker. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Real Talk podcast. Today, I'm a little bit excited here because this is a big thing for me. Today, we're joined by 9-time, at least at NBA there, shocking, BBL, BBL winner, which is technically more than LeBron, I think. So, let's add that to your bio. We're joined today by Drew Lasker, who is a guard for the Newcastle Eagles. Drew, how are you doing?
I'm good, Phil. Man, I'm actually I feel good about that intro. It says how highly you think of me that you would put my name beside the NBA. So you're off to a good start, man. But yeah, I'm happy to be on here today.
When I was doing a bit of research and I saw that, in fact, over the 16 years that you've been playing in the BBL, that you've won 9 titles. I mean, we spoke a little bit before coming live. Is that people think of basketball, they automatically think of the NBA. The BBL is maybe an afterthought, but to win 9 titles, whether that be the league or the BBL Cup or whatever it may be, that is still a massive, massive achievement. And I think, I've said before, I take my hat off to you for that. And technically, it is more than LeBron. So if anyone has anything to say, you've won 9, he's only won 4. So, let's just put that out on social media. But for those who haven't come across you, Drew, do you want to kind of just give like a little bit of an intro into you and where it all started for you in basketball?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Obviously, my name is Drew. I'm from Houston, Texas. Actually, Katy, Brookshire, Texas, which is a suburb like 30 miles out of downtown Houston. And I actually grew up in Germany. I moved to Germany when I was 5 or 6 years old. I'm a military kid. My dad served in the U.S. Army for 22 years. So that's kind of where my memories began and kind of where my life started. And then once I moved back to the States when I was 8 or 9, that's where the transition kind of began for taking basketball seriously, because I was introduced to Michael Jordan. And, right away he became my idol, because I was dealing with some things when I arrived in the States, because I was different. I spoke different. I carried myself differently than my peers, because obviously I grew up in another country. So, it was tough for me dealing with bullies and at that age, when you're 8 and 9, if you're different, you get made fun of. So I kind of gravitated to Michael Jordan, because I felt that if I could, I saw how he was treated, and I was like, man, if I could get as good as Michael Jordan, then, I could be respected. So that's where kind of my basketball journey began.
So, I mean, again, whenever people talk about Michael Jordan, they automatically think of, the greatest of all time. Now, I know obviously LeBron and various others are looking to take that from him, but what was it specifically about, other than the sort of being respected thing, what was it about Michael Jordan? Was it his game? Was it his status within the game? Or was it just the way he carried himself that sort of wanted to emulate that?
Yeah, it was the entire package. Like, obviously, it began with his basketball skills. For those who don't know Michael Jordan, I mean, he was like the Lionel Messi of basketball. Like, he just was on a different level from everyone. They called him Air Jordan because, he used to fly in the sky. And he just had that little swagger about him on the basketball court. And then when I used to watch him in interviews, how he carried himself. I saw that transition, how he could be like a basketball player and then transition into being professional off the court. You know, the way he
Yeah.
carried himself off the court was always professional. And so it was and then the way people treated him, you know, it was like they kind of treated him, you know, everyone kind of looked up to him. You know, he was, you know, everyone's idol and he was treated like a god. So, you know, it was the whole package with MJ.
Yeah. So I know obviously through reading information online that you went through high school, which I think was the that was the school that you were actually inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually my college. So
Oh,
we
okay.
go from high school to university, and that's where I was inducted in Point Loma Nazarene University out in San Diego, California, in 2018, which is an honor, man, because like you know that's legacy. And like during the time, I actually remember sitting in the room at the time. They didn't have like a Hall of Fame kind of area. It was just like in a classroom where we used to watch film, and I remember seeing those names on the wall, and I was like, wow, like you know guys names from the 60s. I was like,
Yeah.
man, you know some of these guys are actually have passed away and their name still lives on. So for that to come full circle, for me to be included in that in 2018, it was just a surreal feeling.
Yeah. I mean, around that time, obviously in college, university, I think that's probably around the time, and correct us if I'm wrong, that's around the sort of time that most kids with ambition to go and play basketball professionally, that's around the time that the sort of the NBA kind of comes into your line of sight in terms of career. Was that
Absolutely.
ever an option for you, or did you have your goal set on other things?
I mean, from 7 years old, I always wanted to be in the NBA, and that was always the goal. But you know, so the NBA or professional basketball is always a dream, a goal of any kid, like it was mine. But then once you get in college and university, like you mentioned, that's when you start to realize how realistic it is. And you know, getting towards the end of my college career, you know, I knew that it was probably at that point wasn't feasible. So then, you know, that's when I started, you know, kind of learning about the overseas options in European basketball, because I knew regardless if I fell short of the NBA, all I wanted to do was play basketball wherever that was. I would have played on the moon if that's where, you know, if there was a league there.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, I wanted to continue my career, and that's where kind of European basketball came into the picture.
Now, I just want to touch on something that you said there. You said going to the NBA wasn't an option. You on your on drewlasker.com on your website, you mentioned something about you didn't lack anything in terms of athleticism, but in terms of skill, you weren't at the level that those who were being sort of touted around the NBA in the draft and all that kind of stuff were at. You said then that was when you focused, or you started to focus on skill development.
Yeah.
When we've spoken on the podcast before with previous guests about that mentality of self improvement, how important has that ability to kind of look at your strengths, weaknesses, and analyze them and figure out where you need to spend more of your time and where you need to work on? How a bigger part of your career and your mindset has that been?
I mean, it's humongous. I think it's the probably the most important thing when it becomes about becoming a professional, because it's about knowing yourself. And a lot of times, players you know they're not realistic with themselves, and you have to self reflect. You have to look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm good at this. I'm not so great at this. So how can I because the hardest part is becoming a professional. Like
Yeah,
that is the most difficult thing in the world, because less than 1% of the population is going to make it to some type of professional league. But then the next step, once you actually make it, the second hardest step is actually maintaining
yeah,
that career. That's even harder than getting your foot in the door. And that when it comes talking about that longevity, it's about understanding, you know, what you lack. And for me, I was always real with myself about what I was, and I tried to play best as I could to my strengths, but at the same time improve on the areas that I was weak at, that I knew had value. And that's important too. It's not about just saying, oh, let me work on this part of my game just because. Like it has to be, it has to bring some type of value to the environment that you're in. And when I say
Yeah,
environment, it means the particular team, it means the league, because a skill in the BBL that's required is completely different from a skill that's required in France. So you have to,
yeah.
you have to you have to look at the micro scope of skill development.
You mentioned one word there that I really want to focus on is maintain. So you have been at the top of the BBL for 16 years. You've won 9 titles. You strive to remain an elite level basketball player in the BBL. I guess what I'm saying is how do you overcome challenges and maintain that winning elite level mindset?
At this particular point in my career,
Yeah,
for me personally, I mean that's an easy one, Father Time. As you get older, I'm about to be 38 on Friday, November 20th, and your body just isn't what it was, and so that is the biggest challenge for me personally.
yeah,
It's not about can I actually play at this level, because I know I mentally, like, I feel like I'm on a different level from most people that's on the floor, but it's the physical aspect. So for me personally, like, taking care of my body is actually more important than the being on the court part at this stage of
yeah,
my career. So for example, on we had a game on Tuesday, and on Monday, I text Coach Mac McLeod and said, hey, I don't feel too great. I think I need to focus on physio and a massage instead of our official team practice. And so, and that's exactly what I needed. Waking up Tuesday morning, I felt great and I was ready to go, and
yeah,
had an impact on the game. And so that's the challenge. It's just it's kind of like trying to figure out your body once it changes, and that is the biggest challenge. And it took me about a good 2 or 3 years to figure out how to operate.
yeah. I mean, again, from consuming your content on social media, I see a lot of the train hard at 21 stuff that you put out there, and I think for a guy of 38, I mean, like I'm 33, and I'll happily admit I don't look after my body in the way that I should. But as you say, the older that I'm getting, I'm now starting to realize, well, hold on, if I want to get certain things out of my life, I'm going to have to make those changes so that I'm able to do that. How important is the physical side of things for you? Because as I say, you put a lot of content out there about training and conditioning, and you don't make any bones about how hard you work in the gym. Like how much of an impact does that have? I mean, well, I rephrase the question. You've mentioned how you sort of maintain things now. When you were younger, did you put as much focus on that? Did you have that level of self-awareness to know what your body needed?
Right. I actually, at the beginning of my career, I started my career with some hamstring issues. So,
Right.
which actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I was actually forced to do those things like stretching and looking after your body. But the difference now, as opposed to then, is now that I have the resources. At that time,
Yeah.
I didn't have the resources. So now I have the resources to hire and seek out professionals in that area. So, for example, strength and conditioning, when it comes to diet, and when it comes to massaging and Pilates and all that type of stuff. Like, I try to seek out the best of the best in that field, as opposed
Yeah.
to early in my career, I tried to do it myself, which, like, I'm not a master in those areas, and so that's the main difference, is that obviously with the time, the self-awareness is even much more than what it was then, but now I
Yeah.
have the financial resources to actually invest in myself, in my body, which I wish I had at the beginning, but it just wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, regardless of what sort of industry or game you're in, whether it's basketball, whether it's business, whatever it is it's that investing in yourself. That's the like for me when you come across certain people who they'll use excuses and they'll blame other people, and I'm not performing well because of this and that. Like, it doesn't come down to that. If you want to perform at an elite level, you have to have, and I've I name checked LeBron before. He's another perfect example of understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are and taking accountability to improve that. I mean, I know he spends like millions
Yeah.
on the cryogenic stuff and the boots and all of that stuff. But he, very much like yourself, is prolonging his career and improving performance by investing in yourself. And I don't think a lot of people get that. I think,
Yeah.
would you agree? Have you seen that over the years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would say most of professionals, or being more specific in my field, basketball players, they don't really understand that aspect, because obviously you want to hold on to your money, and they don't understand the financial investment that's
Yeah,
required, because they think, oh, it might cost too much. But I look at it differently. So, because I think about longevity, I think, okay, if I spend 300 pounds on my body, that will allow me to make another 1,000 pounds
yeah,
the next year. Whereas, most athletes, they think, ooh, 300 pounds, like that's a lot, that's too much. But if you think about it in retrospect, it's better to spend 300 to make 700 extra pounds the following year than
yeah,
spend nothing and make nothing the next year. So, that's how you have to look at it. And you mentioned LeBron, and, $3 million is what he invests in his body. And that is an unbelievable amount of resources. But for him, that 3 million, he's turning that 3 million into 75 million
yeah,
every year when we talk about on the court contracts and then off the court, because the on the court performance also draws in other resources off the
yeah,
court as well. So you have to be able to look at the bigger picture, and most times guys don't understand that.
yeah. And again, just when you're touching on sort of the other ventures that come, whether it's LeBron or anyone else's way, you at some point in your career have then decided to branch out into with your own business, Train Hard at 21.
Mm-hmm.
Was that, did you have in the back of your mind, once I finish playing, this is my sort of my go-to once I've retired, or was it just a case of I didn't think that far, this is just what I want to do right now as well?
I mean, I actually kind of stumbled into that area. Train Hard at 21 now. It's a mixture of different entities now, but at the time, at the beginning, it was just basketball training,
Yeah,
and I kind of stumbled into it. But after I graduated from university, I actually had to wait a full year before receiving a professional contract. So for me, going and actually getting that contract, I understood that this thing could end anytime. As difficult
yeah,
as it was to get in the door, it can end at any time. And I have to make sure that I have some sort of transition. So when the opportunity arose for me to get into training, um, I was still focused mainly on my career, because that's, was my first love. But I made sure to invest a couple of pennies into that other thing, because I was like, just in case, I need to make sure
yeah,
um, that there's something else. And so, and once I saw, the momentum build for it, then, the more that it grew, the more that I kept investing back into it. And that's another thing in business as well, is that you got to put resources and finances back into your business. I'm speaking to my entrepreneurs and business owners out there. 30-40% of the profit or whatever we're bringing in, I'm pumping back into the business, because I look at it the same way as a player. The better I can make the brand, the more income we can bring in the future. So it's the same kind of mindset, just a different world.
yeah. And I think one of the things that actually surprised me, I mean, not surprised me in terms of you, because I get, again, from social media, that you are very much a community person, you're very much about giving back, but the level of uptake that, especially back home in Texas, I watched a video on YouTube of some of the interns that you had working with you, and it was very basketball centric, but you were also teaching them skills about the analytical side of the game with Google Docs and all of the stuff that maybe you do without a ball in your hand. Like how much of a kick do you get out of that from seeing these young kids who may or may not have had the opportunity without Train Hard at 21? Like, how much of a kick do you get from that?
I mean, that means the world to me. Being I look at myself as an underdog still now, with all the success that's followed my career and things that's happening now, I'm still an underdog. Like, people don't understand the work, the grind that I put in every single day consistently without results. But, I stay diligent, just trying to be the best version of myself and try to be successful. So I never stop. And, over time, so these things take time to develop. So for me to be in a position to give opportunity, I'm big on diversity and inclusion. A lot of, with my internship program with, the guys that work for me, they're, even with in the podcast world, like I have, kids that's 16, 11, 12 years old working for me. And I don't look at things as age. I look at things as skill. If someone is
Yeah,
has skill and they're passionate about something, I will give them every single opportunity. And I'm about opportunity because a lot of us out there, we don't get that opportunity. It's a, we know how this world works, and it's about those relationships, and it's about nepotism at times, but most of the
yeah,
time. So for
yeah,
me, I try to give anyone an opportunity that I know is going to work and earn it. So that feels great to me. Someone who never really got an opportunity, they have to scratch and claw for everything to
yeah.
be able to give someone else that
Now,
option.
when you obviously came across, I know you came from Texas, you went to Plymouth, I think was the first club, and
Yep.
then Surrey, I think, then Newcastle. Did you see similarities between where you came from in Texas when you came to Newcastle? Did you? Because I think for although Newcastle's a big, vibrant city, there is still a lot of kids who don't get that opportunity. Have you seen some of that and see similarities between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I feel, kind of right at home here in the Northeast because it's, a hard working part of the country. It's not, pretentious and anything like that. It's just people that's just going to work every day and just trying to make a living. And that's the world that I come from. So, that's why I feel so comfortable here. And I see so many kids out in the community um, that remind me of myself when I was that age. And,
Yeah,
so, I just try even from, because I'm in a position to where, kids look up to me. It's weird, but, there's kids that look up to me and it's a big deal for me to even speak to them, respond to them on social media, or even like train them. But,
yeah,
I just try to pull out the vibe that I'm just a normal, regular guy. And I wish that I had someone like myself when I was their age, because I
yeah,
understand like that age is about confidence and you're dealing with self-esteem issues. And, just for someone that you look up to speak to you could mean the world. And so, I understand that all those things that, I knew that I lacked growing up, I just try to make sure that I provide for someone else.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned there sort of growing up and what it was like. If you could go back and speak to 7-year-old Drew, like what would be the piece of advice that you think you would give at that point?
I would definitely just tell myself to just the work will always work itself out in the end, and don't get caught up in trying to please other people, try to be liked by other people, because regardless there's always going to be people who don't like you for whatever reason,
Yeah,
who are envy of you for whatever reason. And so you just have to focus on being true to yourself and don't try to be something that you're not.
yeah. I mean, do you get that when you go home? When you go back to Texas, do you still get a sense that there's some people that think, "Oh, Drew's gone across to Europe and made it as a pro ball player"? Like, do you get that, or is everyone kind of just cool with you?
I mean, to be honest, like everyone I come across is like always supportive of me and positive. But I know, because I know how this world works, there are people out there that probably feel that way. But instead of hopping on social media like a lot of people do and spending a lot of energy talking about haters and stuff like that, like I just have the mindset that there are people who don't like me and that are envy of me or whatever. And I'm like, that's just the way it is. And so I don't even spend my energy in that direction. And I'm comfortable with that because it just comes with the territory. So I just try to focus on the people that are supporting me and want to see me do well and want to see me win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've come across this podcast before. There's it's I think it's called the High Performance Podcast. It's with Jake Humphries of the BBC and this one of his doctor friends, and they interviewed Eddie Hearn from Matchroom Boxing, and when you mentioned there about social media and sort of negativity, he mentioned something along the lines of like some people can be really horrible on social media and it can be quite a toxic environment. Like, do you find that, or do you tend to find that a lot of it is positive towards you, or like what's your experience with it?
Towards me personally, what I see, it's mostly positive, but I understand that as my brand continues to grow, as my face continues to get out there in the public eye, that stuff is inevitable. Like, it comes with the
Yeah,
territory. And I always hear celebrities or well-known people kind of complain about that side of it, but I always think to myself, like this what comes with it. Like,
yeah,
it's just is what it is. So if I'm ever in that position, like, I would like to think that the way my personality is that it just it won't bother me that much, and that I expect it. Like, I expect that type of stuff because it's out there. I mean, you see it during the presidential election, during the
you can't mention that. Oh, that's a
oh,
whole new That's a whole different podcast. That one.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But what I mean from that is, like,
Yeah.
the ugliness
Yes. Yes.
what came, it showed his face during that time, and like it was so much negativity and all this stuff. And so you just have to know it's just out there, and there's
Yeah.
nothing that you can do about it. You just have to focus on just doing what you do and being true to yourself, and don't be drawn into it, because the ugliness of that can create a ugly monster and within yourself and bring out the worst in yourself, because you respond to it and you get caught up fighting people online, and that's just not my style at all. So
Yeah.
I don't think that I would ever get caught up in that type of stuff.
For you as an American, for you, living there, and you go back through the summer months as well. Like, what is it? Like, what does the future hold? Do you think for America now that this decision's being made? Do you
It's
feel
I
more
mean
positive?
I think it's, yeah, because with the past you know guy we had in charge, I feel like he empowered, because like we said, like, there are people who feel that way, like that is what it is. But what happened was, when he was empowered, I'm sorry, when he was in power, he empowered people who felt like him. He gave them the confidence to be outspoken about the way he
Yeah.
might feel and the way other people feel. So that's why, I mean, the last 4 years, have you seen the world as ugly as it is?
Yeah.
Like,
Nah. Never.
online, like racism like, people think like, oh man, racism has always been bad. It's just now people aren't afraid to show it. They're not
Yeah.
hiding it. And so just from that perspective, like, I feel like, when the new president was elected, I just felt like, okay, there could be some peace, because
Yeah.
that's what most people want. They just want peace. And the last 4 years, I feel like it's just been a lot of fighting. And so hopefully, moving forward, we can start working together, collaborating. You got to understand that there's going to be a differences in opinions, political
Yeah.
views, and all that stuff, but it doesn't mean you have to, you know, want to fight someone about it. You can still,
Yeah.
like, you know, um, live together, because we don't have a choice. We have to all live together in this world. So hopefully we can all do so in peace.
No, again, I think now more than ever, especially during this whole pandemic thing, is that we're becoming more. I don't know if globalized is the right word, but there's not as many barriers between the Brits and the Americans and the Spanish and the we're all dealing with the same thing at the same time. Borders really don't mean much unless you bring up the EU, but again, that's a different podcast. Do you know what I mean? But like, we're all becoming more. We're becoming humans. We're not Americans and British and Spanish. We're just citizens of the world. And I think now that, as you say, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have come in, we can now look forward to now enhancing that, rather than it being like, well, they're from a different country and they're from a different country, they're not allowed in. And it just, as you say, it just created a horrible sort of tension everywhere, and it's
Yeah.
like I'm over the moon. Like, and again, he's not my president. It's not even the same country, but I think it's testament to how globalized we're becoming. In that, I don't think the British people have had such a vested interest in an American election before. You know, you look at it from your point of view. He's your president. You live over there as well, but for us Brits, it's like, again, I mean, first and foremost, we don't have to see that guy's ugly face all over the TV, but but we can look forward to like new relationships and it just being like what it was under Obama, like it. But again, I could talk all day about this. Like I love all things American, so But no, before I go, you mentioned a word before that I want to sort of touch up on just before we wrap things up, and it was legacy. For you, I know you're a dad now. You've got, is it one child you've got, or you got
Got two now. I got a
two?
3-month-old now.
Oh man!
So,
So you've got two kids. You're an elite level BBL basketball player. You're a businessman. When all is said and done, what would you like your legacy to be?
man, that's a very interesting question because I only just recently started to kind of start thinking about that. I never ever thought about any. I never thought I'd be in a position to have a legacy. I just wanted to play basketball, but the way things have happened and my life is shaped, I'm in that position, and I just would want someone to say that that guy, he wasn't given anything. He did everything the right way. He earned everything that he was given, and with all of that, all the success that he had, he was just a good dude, and that's what I would be proud for my legacy to be. Because especially now, my legacy is more for my family, my kids, to be able to say, hey, that's my dad.
Yeah, and it's funny you should say that. Like, I've got two kids who are 7 and 8. There we go. And you're right. It reaches a certain point in life where you kind of go, it's not about me anymore.
Mhm.
You're very insular. It's about you, and then you meet someone, and then it's kind of about you and them, and then you have kids, and it's like, whoa. And when you say there, that's my dad, like that is such a big driver for me. And again, I would agree with you on that. In as much as when all is said and done for me, I would love my kids and grandkids for whatever I do. I've got no idea what the future holds for me, but
Mhm.
to be able to just look back and go, that was my dad. Like that's
Right.
it's 4 words, but it's so powerful and it motivates
Powerful.
me. Do you know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like that was my dad. Like I'm immensely proud of my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like it's just it's a lovely sentiment to have, and I'd like to think that I could amount to something so that my kids, will say that. Otherwise, I'm in deep trouble. Um, but no, Drew. Listen, thank you so much for your time today, mate. It's been a valuable insight into you, into the mindset that you have had and have developed over the years. What does the future hold? What's next? Do you think?
Man, you know what? I have no idea because if you ask me, and it's funny. I was just talking to someone about this the other day. Is that you always get that question like, "What is your 5-year plan? Where do you see yourself in
Yeah,
5 years?" And as you get older, like you start to realize how like irrelevant that question is because it very rarely does what you envision in your life happen. So you just have to kind of go with the flow and go where the wind takes you. And it seemed like the wind is kind of pushing me in this kind of into this media world,
yeah,
and I wouldn't even thought I'd be in this world a year ago. So I'm just having fun with it, man. I'm putting my fingers in things that I enjoy and that I'm
yeah.
passionate about, and just see where it takes me. Like I have, that's how I live my life. I just keep myself open minded to any opportunity that comes, and then if I decide to do it, I try to do it to the best of my ability, just like I do when I'm on the basketball floor.
If one thing that I forgot to mention, actually, yes, you've just agreed a deal to join up with Sky Sports, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, which
That
is
that
amazing.
that must be exciting.
Yeah, it's a like I said, man, it's pretty crazy. I don't have any TV experience. Obviously, I have podcast experience, but it's like a fun little challenge. Like every new challenge that I have, it's like I challenge myself inside. Like I have these conversations with myself, like, can you do it? Nah, you can't do that. And then like it's a
Yeah.
fun little challenge. But now like I'm challenging myself that hey, I want to be good at this. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is a big deal.
So when does that start? When will be your first game?
December 3rd, December 3rd. So it's coming up. It's coming up pretty quickly here. So we're gonna start doing some stuff tomorrow. Actually, getting in front of the camera. So really looking forward to it, man. Like it's fun. So I'm just gonna have fun with it.
Good, mate. Well, listen, we'll all be tuning in on the 3rd of December to cheer you on, mate. All the very best with everything, and
Um,
hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Drew, thank you so much for your time, mate. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, Phil. It's been fun.
Take care, mate. Cheers.
Yeah.